Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for taking time during a busy holiday week and just a busy times as it is. It's great to be able to get together and do our lunch and learns the first Wednesday of every month. I'm Kevin Barrett. I am with True North Professional Development based in Seattle. And of course, I have my sidekick with me, Mary Hambleton from Soul Canyon Training and Development down in Medford, Oregon. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got a really, really great topic here today on getting greater results through effective feedback and delegation. Mary is going to be monitoring chat. We have a fairly large group, but there's two ways for you to respond to some of the things that we talk about today. One is to put in chat, and Mary will be monitoring that if you have any questions, but you can also feel free to unmute and ask me any questions along the way as well. Good deal. All right. Well, welcome again. We are here for our free lunch and learn, and it is about get greater results through effective feedback and delegation. We've done both of these topics before, effective feedback and delegation, in the past, but I really wanted to kind of put it through the lens of getting greater results, because really that's what it's all about, right? Being able to be more effective at what you're doing through being able to give feedback and effective delegation. So we've got a lot to cover today. We are going to spend some time. I'll do a little bit of an introduction here about this. We're going to talk about the importance of feedback, some effective feedback techniques, and then we'll talk about the importance of delegation, some delegation strategies. Then we'll leave some time, hopefully at the end here, for a little Q&A, and then do a little bit of a wrap up on the session today. We always wrap up within the hour. So let's just talk a little bit about feedback. And one of the things that I'm going to talk about here today is really what feedback is and why it is so important for us to be able to utilize. And I want to really emphasize the fact that I want to emphasize the fact that what feedback can be used for is not only just at work, right? It can be used with friends, it can be used with family, it can be used in your church group or any other group that you're involved in. It is a way for you to be able to express yourself and be able to do that more effectively than perhaps you do now. So with that, let's do a little activity, a two-word check-in here. So I want everybody to kind of think about this. First of all, think about what's the best feedback that you have ever received or given. And then I want you to put that into your mind and describe that feedback in two words. What did that feedback mean to you? Why was it effective? What worked? What was effective about it? And try to put it into two words. And then, if you will, in chat or unmute, tell us how you would describe that with those two words. What are those two words that describe that best feedback you've received or that you have given? All right, give us a moment here and see if we get some feedback back. I love it. Honest and clear, honest and inspiring. Love it. All right. Any others? You can unmute as well if you'd like. Specific. Good deal. Seen and loved. Love it. Clear and concise. Clear, unvarnished. Feel good. Good. All right. So I want us to kind of keep all that in mind. Those are really great descriptors, and keep that all in mind when we're talking about feedback, because a lot of times we get under pressure, right? Or we just don't have the time, and the feedback that we get doesn't really match all those things that you've all just mentioned here, right? So we want to kind of have the spirit of that as we're talking about providing effective feedback. All right. So some very clear, quick descriptors of what it needs to be. It needs to be clear. It needs to be concise, and it needs to be impactful. When we're giving feedback to people, we really want to make sure that it's got all three of those elements. When someone tells you, hey, good job, right? Is it clear? Not so sure. Is it concise? Well, yeah, it sure is. but is it impactful, right? Oftentimes you kind of go, well, what was good about it, right? Good job. Okay, great. But that's probably one of our go-tos that we do is we try to give somebody feedback and tell them they're doing a good job, but it's not really necessarily all that clear about what was good about it. And therefore it's not all that impactful either. So a focus on making it clear, making it concise, making it impactful, very, very important for us. All right. All right, so let's do some definitions here. So what is feedback? So a definition that I'm going to utilize today, and I think is a really good one, providing information that guides future behavior, enhances learning, improves performance, and fosters growth, right? And I would even add to that, that maybe shares your input or your feelings. Sometimes that's what we do with feedback as well. So let's talk about types of feedback. There's really three basic types of feedback. One is positive, another one is constructive, and the third one there is negative. And what we know from just a ton of research that is done is that positive and constructive feedback together really goes the distance for us. That it may not have a big payoff for us in the beginning, but over time, it's going to really start to have a big impact, right? So our positive is really telling people, great job, what they're doing, right? And trying to be as specific as we possibly can about that. Constructive is, hey, what we might change, right? What we might suggest that they change. The combination of those two things works extremely, extremely well over time. The negative feedback, what research shows us over and over again is that while we might get some behavioral change and we might be able to guide that future behavior, enhance the learning, improve performance, and foster growth, that tends to peter out over time because people just don't like that negative feedback coming at them at all times, right? And so it has a diminishing effect the longer we use that negative feedback. That doesn't mean that there aren't times where negative feedback is the right choice at the time, but it can't be the culture, right? It can't be the thing that we go to every single time. And what I talk to people about in my coaching practice and in the trainings that I do for leadership development and other training is that if you don't have an environment of that positive and constructive feedback, that is really where to start. Start very high with that, and keep the negative stuff low, and then you may be able to kind of over time move it to a little bit more of a balance, right? In fact, actually, I would say even really keep that positive feedback very high and the constructive a little bit lower as well. All right. And then over time, you kind of make an adjustment to that. All right, so why feedback matters. Let's talk a little bit about that. First of all, it's really going to enhance performance. There is just a ton of research about that as people get that feedback, particularly the positive and the constructive feedback, that it really makes a huge, huge difference in terms of their performance and the effectiveness that people have. In addition to that, it also builds trust and relationships. And so people trust you more, you tend to trust those people more, and it builds a stronger bond between you and that other person if you continue to give that effective feedback. In addition, it really encourages continuous improvement. It really encourages people to be better all the time, look for more effective ways to be able to do what they need to do. All right. So let's talk about the impact of effective feedback. I'm going to share with you some of the research that is there. The first one, employees who receive regular feedback daily or weekly from their managers are 3.6 times more likely to be engaged at work compared to those who receive feedback once a year or less frequently. Second, A study by Zenger-Folkman found that employees who receive strengths-based feedback show a 12.5% increase in productivity, while those who receive constructive feedback experience a 10.9% increase in performance. Now, the strength-based feedback, what that means is that I'm really focusing on those strengths that you bring to the job and looking to increase those. If you're familiar with some of the work around StrengthsFinder is a tool the Gallup organization had. There's another one that Marcus Buckingham has that really focuses on identifying people's strengths and then trying to strengthen those strengths. And here some data shows us that when we're focused on that, it tends to really increase people's productivity. Yeah, standout, Marcus Buckingham, great resource, yes. And then the second piece of that is, even if it's just constructive feedback and they're getting that regularly, you're going to see an increase in performance there as well. All right. Another one here, according to a survey by Office Vibe, 69% of employees say they would work harder if they felt their efforts were recognized. Effective feedback, particularly positive feedback, is a critical component of recognition. And finally, companies that implement regular employee feedback have turnover rates that are 14.9% lower for employees who receive no feedback. So think about 14.9% impact on your turnover rates, right? Turnover is very, very expensive. You think about all the things that need to go into that in terms of the hiring process, in terms of bringing somebody new on board, training that new person, and then getting them up to speed, right? The average person takes about a year to really get into their new job, right? And so it really adds expense to your organization if you have that extensive turnover. Quick and easy solve, I shouldn't say necessarily quick, but an easy solve is increasing that employee feedback, right? All right, so breaking news. You may have heard this breaking news. Experts say feedback doesn't work, all right? Great headline, but the headline doesn't really dig into what is really there, what's really important about the information. So let me dig into that for a moment. All right, here's what the data actually says. So if you're hearing that, maybe you've heard that already, that people are saying feedback doesn't work. Well, here's why it doesn't work, right? We tend to focus on what the person did wrong, right? We pick out all those negative things. And in fact, we do that to ourselves, right? The feedback that we give ourselves, we're often picking on what we did wrong, right? We tend to tell the person how we would do it, right? So we've got it figured out, and here's how you can go do it, right? It's one of the biggest problems that I run into working with organizations and with individual managers. You take the best accountant and you make them the accounting manager, but the skill sets for being the best accountant and the skill set for being the best accounting manager are very, very different, right? And so they can't necessarily just tell everybody, do it this way, because it worked for me, right? And that's oftentimes what we do when we give feedback to someone. And then lastly here, we believe that great performance is universal, affects everybody can do it, right? That it is describable, I can tell you how to do it, and that it's transferable. If I know how to do it, you can know how to do it, right? And certainly that's the case with some things that we do, but we make that kind of fundamental mistake of assuming that it is all those things. It's universal, it's describable, it's transferable, right? So we really need to kind of change our paradigm in terms of the way that we give feedback and what we do, all right? We are not at this yet.
Can you fly that thing?
Not yet.
Operator.
Tank, I need a pilot program for a B-212 helicopter. Hurry. Let's go.
Well, maybe we'll never get there, right? But it's not that easy. We can't just download into somebody's head and have them be able to do what we need them to do, right? It's very essential that we learn how to be able to give feedback effectively so that we can change that behavior, so that we can educate, right? And that we can provide growth for people. So let's dig into this a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about some effective techniques for providing feedback. All right, really important. And we saw this in some of the notations that came up in chat, right? Specific and clear. We need to be really specific about what did they do well, right? What could they have improved? And it has to be very, very clear, right? We can't just kind of throw out stuff that doesn't make very clear sense and it's not specific, right? Has to be timely. Really important that we provide that feedback as quickly after something happens as we can, right? If I wait 2 weeks and I say, hey, that presentation you did a couple of weeks ago, boy, you did a really great job on that, right? Well, that feedback is really stale, right? It's like me offering you a stale piece of cheese, right? It doesn't mean nearly as much because it's 2 weeks later. Other stuff has happened, right? Same thing if I'm giving feedback to, hey, you really screwed up a few weeks ago and I haven't talked to you about it yet, right? It doesn't have the impact that we need unless it's timely. So the quicker that we can give that, the better. All right.
Kevin,
Yeah.
I think a lot of times that time is so critical. You can't give it too soon if you're upset by it. So it can, you need to make sure your emotions are in check, but it can't be too late.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't give feedback is because they're so ticked off, they can't think of anything to say, and then they just let it go.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think it is important, even if you've gotten distracted or you were upset, to give it as soon as you can. Maybe it is a week later, right? But if you can say, I needed some time to really think about this before I gave you this feedback, but I wanted to share this with you, right? Or I was really upset by something that happened and I really want to share that feedback with you now. I wanted to be a little clearer with it. So really good point there, Mary. Thank you. All right, let's talk about the next one. It needs to be balanced between the positive and the constructive, right? If you're one of those folks that is used to doing kind of the negative feedback, you're probably not getting as much out of the folks that you're giving that feedback to as if it was positive and constructive about how they're doing things, right? It also has to be focused on behaviors and on outcome, right? So what are the behaviors that you saw, right? One of my least favorite pieces of feedback that people give to people, managers that I've worked for and worked with, you have a bad attitude, right? Well, bad attitude doesn't tell me anything, right? It's the behaviors around that, right? You're rolling your eyes, you're screaming at somebody, you're doing various different behaviors that are exemplifying that you have a bad attitude, right? In addition to that, you have a bad attitude tends to put people back on their heels a little bit, right? And they don't listen to whatever else you say. And then focused on outcomes, it really needs to be what's the long-term outcome of what we're driving for, right? What do we want to get out of this? And that leads to the next thing, which is that it needs to be actionable. It needs to be something that they can actually do something about, right? And the more specific that we can make that, the better. All right. Now, Brene Brown, if you have not read Brene Brown, she's got a lot of great books. I think she's got a special on Max as well. And she's absolutely terrific. And she brings something to this that I think is really important. And that is being authentic, right? As she says here, authenticity is not something that we have or don't have. It's a practice, a conscious choice of how we want to live. Authenticity is a collection of choices that we make every day. It's the choice to show up and be real, the choice to be honest, the choice to let our true selves be seen. And over again, I see with a lot of my clients that when it comes to feedback, they're not really being authentic with how they feel or how that affects them, right? And that lack of authenticity, people pick up on that very, very quickly, right? And so your feedback that you do provide to them oftentimes gets kind of pushed to the side because you have a lack of authenticity, right? So focusing on being you and saying the things that you need to say is really, really important. All right. Some other little things to kind of think about here is really structuring your feedback, staying away from blame and sticking with behavior. So if you feel like you're giving feedback and there's that going on, right, that finger pointing going on, to Mary's point, that's probably not the right time to give that feedback, right? We want to stay away from anything where we're being accusatory of somebody or we're blaming somebody. If anything, rather than doing that, ask questions, right? Be curious about why things were done the way that they were done, why that person said that thing, why something is late, right? And also what happens in this is that we also tend to do generalizations, right? You're always late. You never turn your work in on time. I'm always having to wait for you to get this done. Those kinds of things aren't very helpful in terms of being able to give feedback. So as I say to people, anytime that you kind of feel that finger in the chest kind of stuff, that's not an effective way for you to be able to give feedback, right? To Mary's point, you might be better just really pulling yourself back a little bit, thinking about it, getting yourself, better state of mind so that you can give more effective feedback. All right. All right. So let's talk a little bit about structuring your feedback. And I'm not going to have a whole lot of time to go through these in detail, but these are two really terrific tools that I highly, highly recommend. And you can always reach out to me and learn a little bit more if you'd like to do that. But let me talk about these two. One is iMessages. iMessages is a way for you to be able to take what you're experiencing and reflect that back to somebody, right? And I often share the story that I was in a relationship one time where things just got so bad that it was like throwing Molotov cocktails back and forth at one another, right? And it wasn't very productive. It wasn't very effective, the feedback that we were giving to one another. And so we actually had someone suggest to us utilizing iMessages. And I have to say, my state of mind at the time, I was like, oh God, here's another, here's a tool. I'm never going to use this, right? But I have to say that it has made a huge, huge impact on my life and my ability to be able to get my point across. So here's how iMessages work. What you do is you share, I feel or I am, and whatever that feeling word is. I feel frustrated, I feel angry, I feel upset, right? Whatever word that is you want to use. Then you say what is causing that feeling when something happens, right? And then you follow that with, I would like to, and then say what you want to have happen instead. So let me give you an example of this. Here's one. I feel or I am frustrated that the deadline has been missed. In the future, I'd like you to let me know in advance if you think you will miss a deadline, right? The key to this is that we don't want to use a lot of the word you. You can see that you is in there, right? But we don't want it to be an accusatory you or a blaming you, right? And this isn't a way for you to say, I feel very frustrated because you're an idiot, right? It's really all about the tone and the structure of this and trying to get the feeling word in there, what caused that feeling, and then what you want to have happen instead. All three of those components are super, super important, but I almost think the third one is the most important. What do you want to see happen differently instead? Now, I will tell you that I really recommend for people, I use this in my coaching practice, I recommend for people to write it down the first bunch of times, because what you want to do is you want to be able to get get the right statement, and then you want to read it back and internalize it, right? You don't want to walk up to somebody with a piece of paper that says, I feel frustrated that the deadline has been missed. In the future, I would like you to let me know in advance, right? You don't, we tend to sound wooden, right? If we don't have it internalized, it may not come out exactly like that when we provide that feedback, but we'll get better at it. We get better at it all the time. So writing it down can be a really good tool to help you to be able to internalize these and then be able to say it, right? And I'm to the point now where I can structure these very, very quickly. And by the way, a lot of what I hear from my coaching clients is, well, isn't somebody, isn't the person I'm going to give it to, aren't they going to know that that's what I'm doing? Well, they might. That's certainly a possibility that they might know that. But so what, right? You're able to get your feelings out. You're able to talk about what caused that feeling. And you're able to talk about what you want to see differently. We get better at these things when we practice them, right? And so being able to formulate iMessages in an effective way is really important and will be very helpful for you in terms of getting the results that you want to get. All right. All right. The other tool, which I have used for years and years, this is called SBI. And this one comes in very, very handy, particularly when you're giving someone to feedback and you want to make sure that you're focused on that behavior, right? And so this is SBI stands for situation, behavior, and impact. And so here's an example. The situation is, what was the situation in which something happened? What was the behavior of the person when it happened? And then what was the impact of what they did? So you might say something like, during the team meeting this week, you rolled your eyes at Laura's ideas and it really shut down the conversation, right? It encapsulates the situation. The behavior is you rolled your eyes, right? And then what was the impact? Well, it really shut down conversation. Here's the thing that is really beneficial about SBI is that it includes that impact piece of it. And most of us in our job want to know what impact we're making, right? Or if we're in a group project, we want to know what's the impact that I'm making, right? And so often our feedback that we provide to somebody doesn't really provide that. So this is a great tool to make sure that you incorporate that and that you tell people the impact that they're making. It can also be used to say, the impact they're not making, right? And so keep in mind, impact is, what's the impact on the project? What's the impact on the budget? What's the impact on their role within the company? What's the impact to their career, right? And so utilizing SBI, again, another great tool to be able to help you structure your feedback. If you're not good at giving feedback, you really need to have tools that can help you to get better at it. But it's not a light switch, right? It's not something that you can just change overnight. It takes time and practice to do it. Just like the I statements, I really recommend for people to write these down, right? And then internalize them so that you can say them more effectively. One of the pieces of feedback that I get sometimes from my coaching clients is, hey, I tried that SBI thing or that I thing, and it just didn't work very well. Well, why didn't it work very well? Well, I got really nervous, or I didn't say it the way that I wanted to say it, and I just don't, I don't feel like it's for me, or it's just not going to work. But it's not one of those things that you can do once or twice. It takes time and it takes practice to do it, and you will get better at it. And then you're going to really see some exponential results in terms of what you want to get out of that relationship or the change in behavior that you're looking to see. All right.
Kevin, I love the SBI. I use it often in my coaching, and I ask people what feels uncomfortable. And they'll say, well, I really don't know how I come across. Practice it in front of a mirror so that you can see your body language, so that you can see how real you are. Because one of the things that everybody says about um, feedback is they want honest, clear. Well, it's tough when you're nervous about giving that feedback.
Yeah. It's one of the things that I talk about to people too, if they've got an accountability partner, right? A person who can help you with that. They can be your mirror,
Absolutely.
right? Have that
Absolutely.
accountability person listen to the feedback that you want to give to somebody else and then give you some pointers or some feedback on it. You looked really nervous when you gave that feedback. Looks like you need to practice that a little bit more, right? Or you might want to tweak this word or that word, right, to make it a little bit better. So
Well,
great
when
point
we
there,
know
Mary.
what we want to say, when we know what we want to say, it makes sense to us, and it may not make sense to that other person. So that
Yeah.
that mentor really helps.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Let me share some other little pointers here. And this is from Marcus Buckingham and Ashley Goodall. And I absolutely love these. This is the way that we structure our feedback, right? So it's important for us to really think about the feedback that we give. When we get into a hurry, right, or we've got a lot going on, we tend to shortcut what we say, right? That's where we get into that good job. You did a good job, right? Or it could have been better, but I don't have time to talk to you about it right now, right? And so these are some ways that you can change kind of what you might be saying now and try them to be a little bit more effective. So let's take a look at some of these. So instead of saying, can I give you some feedback? Try, here's my reaction, right? More direct and to the point. All right. Good job. Instead of saying that, well, here are 3 things that you did that really worked for me. What was going through your mind when you did them? It kind of adds a little coaching question on the end. Instead of saying, here's what you should do, say, here's what I would do, right? It still leaves it up to them then to see, does that fit for me? Here's where you need to improve. Here's what worked best for me and why. You're kind of, rather than directing them with what to do, you're telling them what your experience is. That really didn't work, right? Instead of saying that, you could say, well, when you did X, I felt a little queasy about that. I felt a little unclear, right? Instead of saying something like, you need to improve your communication skills, here's exactly where you started to lose me, right? You need to be more responsive. Instead of that, when I don't hear from you, I worry that we're not on the same page, right? Or you lack strategic thinking. I'm struggling to understand your plan. Now, for some of us that are even on this lunch and learn here, some of those statements on the right-hand side just, they tighten up your shoulder blades, right? Because that's not what you do. That's not what you say. That's too direct. It's too, maybe in your face, you feel like. And I will tell you that as you get better at delivering feedback, this is going to get easier to be able to say, right? We have a tendency, if we're not very good at giving feedback, we think we're being too aggressive with somebody when we give this kind of feedback, right? But you may be surprised at the results of that. One of the stories that I often tell is, I'm going to do a little short bit of it today, which is I had a team of 5 brand new people, right? I had 5 people on my team and they were all brand new. And I did a little team building event and I told them, hey, I'm going to be brutally honest with you and I want you to be brutally honest with me. And boy, we had a rough couple of weeks because we were all pretty brutally honest with each other. And I certainly had an event where 2 of the employees came and were brutally honest with me. And it was really hard for me not to just tell them, hey, I'm the boss, right? But what I learned from that is that it really came down to depersonalizing it. It was about business. It was about the team. It was about our projects. And it wasn't about us as individuals, right? So I could feel free to give somebody feedback on that and they would take that on board. They could feel free giving me feedback and I would take that on board. That is an awesome place to be. It's the best team I ever worked with the most efficient, most effective team I ever worked with because of all that. We were at a level where we could just tell each other exactly what we thought, right? And that takes work and practice to get to. All right. All right. One more thing here before I finish out on feedback, and that is to talk here a little bit about the problem player, right? When you've got that person who is just a problem and maybe you're not giving them feedback or you're not giving them very good feedback. So here are two rules. Rule one, provide feedback to deal with issues early on. If you don't deal with those issues early on, it's going to be a lot worse later on, right? And people who don't get that feedback and are the problem player, their behaviors tend to get a little bit worse. And when you go to give them feedback, they are much, much more resistant to it because that's what they've done, right? You've allowed them to go ahead with those behaviors. So provide that feedback to deal with those issues early on. Well, what if I haven't done that, Kevin? What do I do then? Well, that's where rule 2 comes in. Start now, right? It is not going to be easy, but start now giving that feedback, right? And stick to it as much as you possibly can, right? Don't give in. Really be as objective as you possibly can. Use the I statements, use the SBI, right? To be as objective as you possibly can. Stay away from the blame, right? And really just start to try to give that feedback. You also want to make sure that you're giving what are they doing right, right? So what are the positive aspects that you want to share with them as well? All right. All right. Let's pause for a second. I don't think we've got any questions at this point, but I do want to I'm just going to stop the share for a moment, just see if anybody has any questions or anything that they want to add to the discussion around effective feedback. All right. Seeing none, I'm going to go on to delegation, but just feel free to chime in at any point. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the importance of delegation now and how that kind of fits all into this. So first of all, let's describe what is delegation. So delegation is empowering another to carry out specific duties based on their current skills with varying levels of direction and then with clear expectations set. And a great quote here from John Maxwell. If you want to do a few small things right, do them yourself. If you want to do do great things and make a big impact, learn to delegate. So delegating is that we're asking someone else to pick up very specific duties. It has to be based on their current skills, right? We don't want to delegate something to someone who doesn't have the skill set to get that done, right? Certainly we should believe in stretching people, but we don't want it to be too much, right? So we want to try to have it match their current skills. The varying level of directions is really important as well, right? And so it's not where we can, thank you. Thanks, Maybell. It's not where we can just, hey, give this job over to somebody and then never check in, right? We can do that with people that we've really built a good delegation practice with, but not the average employee probably. And then of course, clear expectations set, right? Oftentimes we delegate to somebody and hey, go do it. And we haven't really told them what we expect. What does it look like? What's the deadline on this? When does it need to be done? When do I want you to check in with me? All of those are really important aspects of this. All right. All right. So why don't we delegate? Let's go into chat. Tell me why we don't delegate. Drop it in the chat or unmute. Tell me why we don't delegate. Anybody? I can do it better. Yes. Too hard to explain the task, easier to do it myself, quicker to do it myself. Having a hard time trusting. Oh, love it. All right. Absolutely. Sometimes quicker to do it myself. I might not like the result. Easier to do it ourselves. Absolutely. Boy, that's a repetitive one, right? Unclear roles and expectations are the number one reason people fail. Absolutely. All right. So here's some things I want you to think about regarding delegation, right? It's easier to do it myself. I won't get it done correctly, or it won't get done correctly. It would take too much time to train them to do it. It's something I like to do, right? Oftentimes we hang on to it because I like doing it. It would just add more to a busy team. Boy, I hear that all the time. Oh, the team's so busy already. I don't want to give them more to do. And that sometimes is the right answer, but it's not always the right answer, right? It might show that I'm replaceable. I've actually heard that with coaching clients, right? I don't delegate to people because I don't want them to take over my job. It means that I have to talk to my people. I actually had a client say that to me one time. I don't know how. I don't know how to delegate. That's legitimate. All right. All right. One more thing to think about this, that if you're okay with all of that, then you don't have to delegate. If you're okay with late hours, then you don't have to delegate. If you're okay with working weekends, then you don't have to delegate. If you're okay with missing family and friends, guess what? You don't have to delegate, right? And if you're okay with not developing your team, then you don't have to delegate, right? It's a choice that we make. So what we want to do is we need to build problem solvers, right? If we had a team full of problem solvers, would our job be a lot easier? Absolutely. But if we don't delegate small responsibilities, medium responsibilities, large responsibilities, then we're not going to have those problem solvers, right? At one point, I found myself in my career where I didn't have time to do one-on-ones with my team. I didn't have time to do performance reviews. If HR hadn't come to me and said, you have a final deadline, you have to get your performance reviews in, right? I don't have time for that, right? And then obviously there's something wrong there. Something needs to change, right? And the real challenge for me was that I was there at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and my team was going home at 4:30, right? So delegation can really help us to be able to balance that out a little bit. Now, we've got a couple of barriers that we run into in terms of that. One is trust issues, right? And that came up in our little list here, right? I don't trust them. They don't trust me, right? I know I can get it done quicker, or I'm not going to get the quality that I need to get, right? And so that's a barrier that we need to overcome to get that done, right? Now, I share this next slide quite frequently, but I'm going to share it yet again because this quote is so true, and I really encourage you to look up Paul Zak. Trust is a leading indicator for performance. If trust is higher, performance will be higher. So we need to do things like delegation to help build trust, right? The feedback that we talked about a little earlier, that builds trust. And the longer we can start to build that trust and the higher we can build that trust, the performance of our people and of ourselves is going to be better. It's going to be higher, right? So look at ways that you can build trust with your team, with your people, right? That is going to help you immensely. All right, so we have trust issues. We also have the fear of losing control, right? So for some of us, we're just gripped so tightly on the things that need to be done that it's okay that we're working 12-hour days, right? It's okay that we're missing our son's softball game, right? Or our daughter's recital, right? It's okay. But it's not okay, right? It takes a toll on us, right? And then lastly, lack of time to delegate. I think I mentioned that already, right? That I didn't have time to do one-on-ones and I didn't have time to do performance reviews, right? But all of that takes a toll. And so we've got to look for ways that we can overcome those barriers. So let's just talk a little bit about what are the benefits of delegation. Increased job satisfaction. Number one, surveys show it over and over again. People are more satisfied with their jobs if they've been delegated responsibilities. All right. And by the way, your own job satisfaction will increase. It does build trust with people. It builds their skills. It increases motivation for people. It provides employees autonomy. And if you've been paying attention to all the career changes people made with the pandemic, this was right at the top of their list. I don't have any autonomy. I don't like my job, along with I don't like my boss, right? But employees want more autonomy in what they do, all right? Can result in better decisions, contributes to better teamwork, gives you more time to focus on important activities, right? One-on-ones are important. Performance reviews are important, right? If you don't have the time to do those important things, then you're gonna run up against a wall. You're gonna burn yourself out very, very quickly. And lastly, it gives you a great opportunity to coach, right? Some of us are not all that comfortable with being in that position of being a coach, but delegation really gives you that opportunity to be a better coach. All right. All right. Great quote here from Adam Grant. Leadership is not about pulling people to follow your path. It's about shining enough light for them to find their own route. Bosses aim to wield power. They issue commands to maintain control. Leaders strive to empower. They delegate authority to unleash potential. There has been nothing more satisfying to me in my career than people who worked on my team who have gone on to great success within the team, outside the team, but in the same company and outside the company. It is just incredibly satisfying to be able to do that and to help people unleash that potential that they've got. All right. All right. So let's talk about some delegation strategies here. First one here, really important, is to define tasks clearly. Be really clear about what it is you want them to do. And as I often tell people, also tell them what you don't want them to do, right? What do you want them to do? What do you not want them to do? Make sure that you select the right person for it, right? Really think about what does it require to get this task done, and does this person have those tasks? Provide the necessary resources and authority to do it, right? Do they have the budget to do it? Do they have the people that they need to be able to do it? And do they have authority to make decisions? And what decisions do they have the authority to make? All right. Set clear expectations and deadlines. Really important. You're going to make your life so much easier if you're very clear up front. What are your expectations on the quality of the project, when it's going to be done, when they should be checking in with you, all of those things. And then don't miss the last one, monitor progress and provide support. And depending on the task that you're delegating and the person you're delegating it to, you may have to really spend time on providing that support, right? One piece of advice that I will give you is really, if you're going to delegate to somebody and they're the right person to be able to delegate that to, make them responsible for checking in with you. Make them responsible for the deliverables for that particular task. And if they're not meeting when they're supposed to come to you, right, then you go to them. If they're not meeting the deliverables for that, or the timelines that you've set, or those expectations, then you've got to step in at that point. All right. All right. So some of this came through a little bit in our comments that we had in chat, but this is what delegation feels like. All right. And I apologize. This is as clear a picture as I could get, but some of you might be familiar with the family circus. So mom says to Billy, quick, Billy, run these out to the mailbox. They need to be sent today. And then Billy does what Billy does, right? He runs around the house, runs around the kitchen table, up over the furniture and all that stuff, around the light pole outside. And then, oh, too late, mommy. We just missed him, right? That is a little bit what it feels like when we delegate to people. And that's to be expected, right? It's to be expected. But the clearer you set expectations, the clearer you have deadlines, the more conversation you have with that person to make sure that you are on the same page about this, the better it's going to be. And this is an investment in time, folks. This is not, one of the things about that not having time to do it is you have to take the time to do it, and it gets easier to do it for that person and for you. All right. Now I've got a couple more things that I want to cover off here, and let me just make some little adjustment here because I'm going to edit a few of the little things that we're going to go through. All right. This is really important. So intentional positive communication fuels your team's success. So when we're looking for tools, right? Well, intentional positive communication promotes an environment of psychological safety, fuels teams to think creatively and identify opportunities, and empowers the team to take risks and seize those opportunities. It is the foundation for anybody that manages people, whether it's on a project or as a team. Really important that you've got that intentional, positive communication with your team, right? It sets an incredible culture, all right? We talked already about feedback. Feedback's important as well, but here's another tool, utilizing SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, time-bound. Really important to be able to set up those goals with people when we're giving feedback, or when we're delegating to them. All right. Now I have a little handout that I shared last year in our Lunch and Learn, and we're in the process of putting this into a document. And unfortunately, I don't have the document ready, but this is called the Delegation Ladder, and it's something I've been working on for quite some time about, getting that right project for the right person, and how much do I delegate, how much do I have them report back, and whatnot. And so I will have this available sometime early next week. If you're interested in getting a copy of this, feel free to email me. You see my email address up there by the logo. If you email me, I will make sure that you get a copy of it. It also includes things to think about before you delegate and things to follow up on after you delegate as well. So great tool. Unfortunately, I just couldn't get it ready in time for the Lunch and Learn. All right. So as a final thought to this, when we're talking about both feedback and delegation, it's about outcomes and results. If we can keep our mindset to that it's about getting a certain outcome or a certain result, what's the best way for me to do that, given that I'm working with people, right? And people have feelings and people have emotions, right? And I need to be able to get them to do what I need them to do in the most effective and efficient way, right? So if we keep that hat on about it being outcomes and results, I think that's going to help a lot. All right.